Okay, so just while we have our attendees joining us, today I'll do a quick introduction to today's session. First off, welcome to the webinar today. My name is Laura Egan O'Brien. I'm the Marketing Manager for the UCD College of Engineering and Architecture. Today is the fourth and final of our TalkRad virtual event series. And for today's webinar, we'll be hearing from Associate Professor Eoin O'Neill, who is Head of School of our School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy. And we'll also be hearing from Dr. Oliver Kinnane, who is the Programme Director for our newest programme offering, our Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action Masters. They'll give you an overview of the programmes, and then towards the end of the session you'll have a chance to ask us any questions that you might have relating to the programmes or maybe making an application to us. And for the Q&A part of the session, we'll be joined by my colleague Katie O'Neill, who is the Senior Marketing Manager for the college, and also my other colleague Eoin O'Neill, who is the Senior Programme Manager for this particular school also. If you have a question throughout, just type it into us, use the Q&A button which is located on the control panel at the bottom of your screen, and just also make sure that your screen is in speaker view mode for today, which if it's not already, you can toggle using the button at the top right hand corner of your screen. And then lastly, just before we start, just to let you know, we are recording the session today, and after the event I'll follow up with you and send you that recording in case you need to revert back to it at any stage. We seem to have a good few attendees with us now, so we might kick off and get started. First up, as I mentioned, is Associate Professor Eoin O'Neill.
I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about the school. Could you hear everything there, Laura? So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about the school. So the School of Architecture, Planning and Environmental Policy incorporates 4 distinct UCD subject areas: architecture, environmental policy, landscape architecture, and regional urban planning. And the school is unique in Ireland and makes a distinctive contribution to national life while also having a very strong international reputation. So in the global rankings, the school is in the top 150 for architecture and the built environment subject areas. So in terms of our specific subjects, each of which has its own distinctive programs, UCD Architecture has the longest established architecture program in Ireland and celebrated its centenary in 2011, and it's the only research intensive architecture group in the country. UCD Environmental Policy have the only established environmental policy specialism in Ireland, established in the early 1980s, which has led to significant national and European success in attracting research funding and has national and international profile and policy impact. UCD Planning, it's the longest established planning school in Ireland, celebrating 50 years of planning education in 2016, and the only research intensive planning unit nationally. And then UCD also provides the only landscape architecture and programme, also over 30 years old and with strong pan-European connections. So overall, the school, it's the premier school for professional programmes for architecture and the built environment in Ireland. All 4 subjects offer professionally accredited undergraduate and graduate programmes within a research-intensive learning environment. So within the UCD campus, which we hope that you will all get to visit, all the subject areas are located in the UCD Richview Newstead precinct, which is its own sort of semi-campus of its own within the wider Belfield campus. The school is the largest by staff number within the college. So there's 120 staff, whether they're academic faculty, teaching design fellows, or support staff, and also our research staff. And then student numbers, we've over 550, again, the largest in the college. In terms of faculty, we've over 40 professors, full professors, associate professors, assistant professors, and about 42 design fellows who are studio teachers that are also professionally practice-based architects and landscape architects. So we've really strong connections to practice, but also then really strong body of professional researchers working on various research projects, European funded, Irish funded projects. That's just a little bit of background about the school. In terms of its key strengths that are embedded across the taught programs, we've a track record of our planning and environmental policy research. It informs public policy, but all that learnings are embedded across the programs. Our alumni, faculty and adjunct staff are part of a long list of award-winning designers and architects that have global recognition. Our faculty are also very active in terms of social engagement with local communities, shaping cities, shaping landscapes. Then a cornerstone of our global reputation is the quality and expertise of our faculty and staff. And our teaching is delivered by international experts in their respective subject areas. So that's just, it gives an overview of the key strengths of the school. So I'm just going to run through our various programs. There's quite a list, so I'll probably leave it a little bit light on the detail, and maybe we can respond in more detail to some of the questions. My colleague Oliver Kinnane is going to jump in about halfway through and give an overview about the MSc in Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action. So I'm just going to start with the Masters of Architecture. Again, I'll give a little brief synopsis about that. So the school has long led the way in architectural study and practice in Ireland. Its graduate and research programs call all aspects of the practice of architecture and landscape architecture, as well as advanced areas of conservation, sustainability, urbanism, history and theory. And the program equips students to deal with complex design problems in a challenging context. So studio projects, academic writing, practical experiments, I suppose, and then key focus on the development of professional capacities. There's a very strong emphasis on design. There's a very strong cohort of design practitioners that are employed by the school as faculty, and also as design practitioners, design fellows who are practitioners who are embedded across the studios. So there's a good staff-student ratio across all the studio classes. The program equips students to work in the field of architecture anywhere in the world. It's accredited by the RIAI, RIBA, and also has substantial equivalency with the National Architectural Accrediting Board, NAB, in the US. So RIAI is the Royal Institute of Architects in Ireland, and RIBA is the Royal Institute of British Architects. So it has very strong international accreditation and recognition globally. And there's a huge list of award winnings. The most recent and well-renowned are presently Yvonne Farrell and Shelley McNamara, who won the RIBA International Prize, have curated the Venice Biennale, the RIBA Gold Medal, and also the Pritzker Prize in the last few months. So there's a huge recognition of our architecture faculty with a global profile. I'm just going to move on now to the Masters in Regional and Urban Planning, so the MRUP. This is a 2-year full-time program. So in today's complex and rapidly changing world, with threats posed by climate change, economic crisis, rapid urban growth, planners face the challenge of creating places that combine environmental quality with a vibrant economy, quality of life and distributive justice. There's a focus in this program on developing conceptual knowledge and then practical skills, preparing people to enter the world of planning practice, planning consultancy, city management, or go into the world of research. Again, there's a strong focus amongst our research-led faculty who are embrace professional, well, they're embedded with bringing their research to policy, to the policy-making arena and into practice, informing practice. And also we have a large number of practitioners who come into the studio classes to bring in some of those professional perspectives from practice on a day-to-day basis. This program is accredited by the Royal Town Planning Institute, the RTPI, and the Irish Planning Institute, the IPI. And this has also international recognition. Again, a really well-established program, just like the MArch, of long-standing repute. And we generally, across both of these programs, get really strong candidates, and they have had, and we hope continue to have, really strong recruitment prospects and employment prospects across industry into the coming period. So I'm just going to focus now on the MSc Urban Design and Planning. This is a newer program, but it's running now a few years and very successfully. It has a very strong international profile in terms of the candidates who are on the program. So urban design lies at the interface of architecture and urban planning. One of the reasons that we started this program was we had the expertise in planning, we had the expertise in architecture, and it blends a number of modules from across both of these subject areas within the school. So this master's program is focused on the role of urban design in the context of urban planning, and is delivered with an emphasis on the distinct methodologies, professional perspectives, and pedagogies of that discipline. So it provides specialist knowledge and skills in urban design theory and practice, urban conservation, nature-based solutions, and the role of design in practice. So there's a really wide range of modules across this program. It has established a strong reputation. It's relatively new, but well established at this point, and is getting really strong applications from around the globe. All of the MRUP, the MArch program, and the MSc Urban Design all have their own studio, specialist studio settings. So all the studios are operated in dedicated studio spaces to provide for those. Each architecture student and urban design student has their own dedicated desk space as well. So I'm just going to talk about the MSc Planning, Development and Urban Design. This is a newer program than the urban design one. It's a little bit more specialist in nature. So it's focusing on bringing people who have a specific architecture degree qualification background to gain a professional accredited standing as a planner as well as an architect. What I should say about the MSc Urban Design and Planning, it enables planners to pursue a specialism in urban design and planning if they've done a specialist planning degree, to gain an urban design specialism. This particular MSc Planning, Development and Urban Design, it enables people who are from an architecture background to gain an a planning accredited qualification over the course of a year full-time or 2 years on a part-time basis. So the capacity to develop planning and urban design solutions, to analyse them critically, to provide guidance in relation to implementation is one for which there is growing demand. Last programme, urban design lies at the interface of architecture and urban planning, with both disciplines contributing complementary but contrasting approaches to urban design theory and practice, and that's mirrored in the distribution of the modules across planning methodology, planning society and diversity, introduction to urban design, plan making studio, urban design studio as a selection. So just a wide variety of modules on offer across this particular program. This program is led by Assistant Professor Arthur Parkinson. Enda Murphy leads the MRUP, and Emmett Scanlon leads the MArch. So I might hand over briefly to Oliver. He might say a few words on the MSc Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action, if he wants to come in. It's a 1-year full-time program. So I'll hand over to Oliver for a minute.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Eoin. Hello, everybody. I am Oliver Kinnane. I'll be Program Director of the MSc in Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action, which is a new program, as Eoin said, created just this last year, primarily in response to the climate crisis, which is, strongly linked to development and construction in the built environment. Just as a bit of background, I guess today we live in a highly urbanized planet. We have over 230 billion meters squared of built floor area, and we're set to double that by 2060. In doing so, we will consume over 100 trillion kilograms of CO2 equivalent. And added to that, the buildings that we have in situ today consume almost 10 trillion kilograms of CO2 each year. The climate modelers tell us that we have about 500 trillion kilograms of CO2 left for a 50% chance of avoiding a 1.5 degree in temperatures. So the buildings we will build in the next 40 years alone will consume over 20% of that remaining budget if we build them as we build today. And to operate the buildings we have in that same time period could push us beyond the remaining carbon budget. I mean, I think the message is clear. We need to rapidly decarbonize the operation of our built environments. We need to establish an urbanism that is sparing of energy and natural resources. We need to design and operate our buildings much, much more efficiently. We need to use construction materials with low embodied carbon. We need to retrofit, renovate, and reuse our buildings first before demolishing and building new ones. We need to design for end of life, and we need to take action for the climate, and we need to do that fast. So this new MSc in Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action will teach many of the skills and policy and planning requirements for such a transition. You will take subjects such as architecture and climate change, sustainable built environments, urban design theory, renewable energy systems, climate policy and politics, air pollution, just to name a selection of the core modules and the option modules that will be available. A long list of option modules is available, and they are listed on our website. I mean, you will learn skills such as GIS, BIM, building energy modeling, research methods in climate action and policy. You will undertake energy efficient building design, renovation and retrofit projects, and also your own research projects on topics of your choice, or research projects that we can put you in within our own bigger European research projects running within our school, of which there are many, and many within the smart cities, sustainable communities area of research. Or if you'd rather, you can start an internship with leading companies in the field of sustainable design for the built environment. I mean, we need to create a sustainable future. Finding ways to create a more sustainable built environment is essential to achieving that. And I believe that the MSc in Architecture, Urbanism and Climate Action will offer you a very good education in doing so. Thank you.
So Owen's just going to finish off talking us through some of the programs that are still available left within our particular school here now.
So thanks, Oliver, for introducing that new program. We're very keen to promote applications to this new program. We're getting strong interest from a variety of backgrounds. Hopefully that will be maintained, and we'll have a really good mix of students come September. Just going to move on to the MSc Environmental Policy. So my background is in environmental policy. I directed this program for a number of years. It's now led by Leo Lades. So this is a one-year MSc designed to equip students with essential knowledge about environmental sustainability and policy and governance frameworks for environmental action. But it's also developing key professional tools to enable graduates to apply policy-oriented skills creatively in their future careers. So there's a big focus on understanding the theoretical basis for policy action, informing policy action, designing the appropriate policy environment to achieve environmental outcomes that are preferable to the status quo. The program takes an international perspective environmental issue. It's strongly informed by EU environmental policy and addressing contemporary environmental debates like climate change, water policy, energy issues, urban resilience. All students have a choice in the final semester of either pursuing an internship of their selection or of undertaking their own research project to inform a research paper and thesis. So there has been a really strong mix of students from a global perspective that have pursued this program over a number of years. It's had a really strong track record in gaining employment in a variety of sectors, whether that's in environmental policy, in the public service, consultancy, media. Quite a number have also pursued research PhD opportunities, as have those from the MRUP as well. So EU environmental policy, environmental economics, tools for sustainable development. So tools for sustainable development is a studio-based module. So like some of the other planning and architecture programs, this also has a studio module where it's a bit more practice focused and solving or putting forward solutions to an applied environmental issue. So that's the MSc Environmental Policy. I'm just going to talk briefly about our two landscape programs now. So the MArch SC Landscape Studies, it's a 1-year full-time program. So it recognizing the wide range of contemporary landscape topics present in this rapidly changing world, the structure of this 1-year program allows students to deepen their knowledge of subjects that correspond with chosen individual interests. Landscape studies students meet the Masters of Landscape Architecture students in a real year-long, world site-based multidisciplinary design studio. The curriculum is very flexible and students choose elective modules that allow them to pursue their personal strands of interest about cultural, ecological, or design matters. This year-long program of multidisciplinary study is mainly for graduates of landscape architecture and other design-based degrees, but also accepts graduates of cognate disciplines also. So it's a 1-year program, or 2-year program. The Masters of Landscape Architecture, it's a 2-year full-time program. This one is an accredited program. So the MLA, it's an internationally recognized professional qualification. UCD's MLA is accredited by the Irish Landscape Institute, as well as IFLA, the International Federation of Landscape Architecture. The MLA is a critical design-based program that prepares students for juggling with the types of complex issues that are affecting towns and cities, including in Ireland, where questions of climate change, sea level rise, flooding, biodiversity, habitat loss all meet planning, sprawl, housing issues. So it pursues a site-based approach that seeks to understand the types of cultural, political, ecological, spatial, environmental conditions and processes that affect the quality of modern life. Again, it has a variety of modules with option modules for, apart from landscape studios. So like architecture, about half of the programs in architecture and in landscape architecture are studio focused. So they're based in the studio, working on projects, whether individually as part of a group, rather than traditional lecture format. The option modules, however, on this include ones from climate change and biodiversity, environmental assessment, urban design, landscape research, GIS. So there's a variety of other modules that are embedded across the program to provide the strongest career prospects for students as they graduate. I think you'll find across the programs as a whole, there are very strong links with practice, very strong links with the professional bodies, and there have been really strong employment prospects for all our graduates with the strength of the economy as it has been up to this point. I'm sure COVID-19 will bring about its own challenges. We don't know what will happen in the coming months, but hopefully our respective governments will be able to get on top of it and bring back life to normality, with strong employment prospects, hopefully bouncing back as people emerge from their respective degrees. So I've given you a good overview of the degrees. As I mentioned, we're a really strong we have professional programs that are professionally accredited. What I should have mentioned about the MSc Environmental Policy, it is also a specialism accreditation for those who are coming from the undergraduate planning programs that have RTBI accreditation. So all our programs have really strong recognition. The accreditation model enables people to travel globally with that recognition and to work internationally with that, I suppose, international stamp of approval. I might bring back in Laura or Katie at this point. I don't know if there's been many questions coming in. I think I gave about 25 minutes of a whistle-stop tour of quite a lot of programs, so I'm sure there's a few questions.
Great, thank you very much, Owen, and to Oliver as well. I'm just going to invite my colleague Eoin O'Neill to join us for the Q&A also. And then if people want to start typing in their questions, just in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen there, that would be great. We've had one question in so far. Let me just unmute Erin.
And I will start my video.
Right. Hi Erin, thanks for joining us. So far we've had one question in, and it's just in relation to our Masters of Landscape Architecture, and it's around, I suppose, prerequisites as far as the background that students might have to have before they commence their studies with us. So maybe Erin, if I throw it to you, and you can maybe speak more generalised about students having to have prerequisites or what that actually means for students.
Yep, so I suppose generally, you know, students would come from a related discipline, so that might be architecture, it might be, you know, urban design, it usually would be something studio based, which would have had a background in the studio. So generally speaking, we would kind of ask interested applicants who aren't from a kind of obvious like architecture or something that clearly related to speak to the program director and maybe to look at their background, the background they have. We also have a preparation program, a landscape pathway, which is a preparation program as well, where students maybe who have a related discipline but don't have the exact background that is required, where they might be picking up modules from the undergraduate degree program as well. So it really depends on the background, but where it's not a very obvious connection, we would refer applicants or people who are interested to speak to the program director, so pioneers.
Thank you very much. I think that helps. And then just also, we've got a couple of questions, obviously at other webinars we've been hosting as well around the situation to do with COVID-19 and the impacts it has for our current students and prospective students. Katie, maybe if you want to speak to what that means for our prospective students, and then Eoin, if you want to just mention one or two pieces about what's happening with our current students.
Yeah, so for our prospective students, what I will do, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, as we all do, and we are updating daily an FAQ section on the UCD website, which will answer a lot of those. So I will pop that URL into the webinar chat, and I suggest that you save this and you can check it every couple of days, because it is updated as more information comes to light, because as you know, we're all working in a very fluid situation. But currently, as it works, we are very much working towards welcoming our students in September. I'm very much looking forward to having you all on campus. However, UCD is also looking at a number of contingency plans, just in case we have to either delay a start date, whether a number of couple of weeks of classes at the beginning have to go on online. So we are looking at contingency plans as well, and as things are defined, we will certainly update the FAQ situation. We'll also be in contact with anyone who has applications, or alternatively, if you're unsure or your question is not answered in the FAQ, either email myself or Laura directly, and again, please, I will pop in both of our emails to the webinar chat.
And so in terms of how we managed it at this point, so over the last number of weeks, after the midterm break, we moved online. So all our classes across all our programs moved online very, very rapidly. At this point, I think that it has been relatively successful. Obviously, there have been challenges with some people don't have as strong a broadband at home as they might wish, and things like that. But as a group of faculty and teaching staff, there was a really strong effort put in by all the staff to make it as seamless as possible, difficult as that was in terms of having to redesign modules to suit an online delivery format. So I suppose that's how it's been this last number of weeks. We're all now working from home as we're doing this virtual recruitment. So it's been a little bit challenging, but hopefully we are developing contingency plans. I am going to a meeting online in about 2 hours time to discuss some contingencies in the event that there's continued uncertainty over the coming months about what we may have to do to ensure that we deliver our programs for September as normal, in whatever format normal shall be.
Great, thanks, Eoin. You'll see also for attendees that Katie has popped up the link to the COVID-19 frequently asked questions in the chat. So you can just take a note of that, and I'll also send it to you after the event, just to make sure that you have it there to hand, and just keep checking it periodically, just to keep up to date with all the relevant information that you might need. We've got a couple more questions coming in. One is just in relation to, and Eoin, maybe you can answer this in relation to our Masters in Environmental Policy. And obviously students for that particular program have a choice between either doing the research project or also doing an internship.
Yeah.
Can you speak to maybe how students choose between one or the other, which is more beneficial for a student, and also then if they were choosing an internship, how that might work for them as far as choosing what companies to go to?
Okay, so for that particular program, there's in a sort of way 3 choices. Well, in broad brush, you have 2 to make. Either you choose to do a thesis, traditionally you do a piece of applied research yourself, or else what we have is an internship research project. So you can choose to do an internship hosted by a company of your choosing. We don't choose the company or tell you where you have to go. I suppose the nature of environmental policy is that there isn't a single industry body that is unlike architecture, where there's loads of architects to pick up all the architecture students. People who do environmental policy usually have a desire to work in a wide variety of possible outlets, whether that's in the public sector, the private sector, the NGO sector, media. So there's no one model of internship that we seek to force upon people. We let the students pursue their own interest to identify an internship, and once that body is capable of hosting you and for you to get the appropriate learning outcomes, we can usually make an agreement with the host. So the student identifies the host. We then liaise with the host to ensure that it's an appropriate setting for the student to be based and to get the learning outcomes. But there is one other option, is that you can sort of work as a research intern for faculty in the department. That's another alternative. So if you didn't want to do a research thesis and couldn't identify a host for your internship, we can also provide you to work on a research project internally if there's an appropriate project available.
Great. And we just had another question more specifically around the COVID-19 measures for maybe students who are having difficulty in either getting an English language proficiency exam done, or if they can't complete that particular part of the condition of their offer. So maybe Katie, if you wanted to mention the alternatives that the university has put forth for those kind of students.
Absolutely. So we recognise that a lot of the more used methods of English language requirements, such as TOEFL and IELTS, are currently not accessible at present. So UCD is accepting Duolingo now, which is an online test. Your results are generally available within about 48 hours, and UCD are accepting those as evidence of proficiency of English. And I will pop up information directly relating to that in terms of the minimum test scores we are in the webinar chat. In terms of your other areas that need to be satisfied, if you're looking for documentation, we are being very flexible, obviously, with students given the current situation around timelines that you're looking. So we are providing extensions of, acceptance deadlines and things like that, where you are being affected directly by COVID-19. So you can either email internationaladmissions@ucd.ie, or alternatively, as you're coming into our college, you can also email myself and Laura directly, and we'll look after you personally on that front.
Thank you, Katie. In relation to the Masters of Architecture program that we offer, and for students who may be wanting to work part-time, particularly if they want to work part-time in an architectural office, do you think that's feasible for a student to be able to do, or beneficial for a student to be able to do?
I'm happy to take that one.
If you want to answer that.
Yeah, I suppose if they come from an architecture background, I think they probably already know the answer to this one. I suppose whatever you've been doing at undergraduate level, it certainly ramps up generally we would say in architecture it's really, really tough to work part-time and do the course at the same time. There's probably a bit more flexibility around hours, because there are seminars and people aren't maybe as tied to the schedule as they might have been at undergraduate level, but even the workload, I suppose, generally would mean that it's very, very difficult, so I suppose we wouldn't recommend it. But of course, it depends on the student, and some students do manage to do some aspects of that. And the term is generally, our semesters are 12 weeks, and generally that's it. So certainly between semesters or in the summer there's time, but it is very difficult to work part-time while being an architecture student here, or I think anywhere really.
I would say more generally, it's challenging to really work and study at an intensive graduate level. Even though for some of the other programs, maybe the lecture hours may look a bit less, but the expectation is that you do a lot of outside reading and dedicate yourself to a lot of group projects or individual projects, and it's hard to work many hours external to that if you want to do well. It may become a struggle, although sometimes it's essential for people to work for their own needs, but it does make it a bigger challenge for people, and it can put them under a lot of stress. So insofar as possible, we'd encourage people to minimize the amount of work they have to do, but if they have to do it, well, sometimes needs must.
Yeah, great. And then just another question in relation to maybe students who are looking to do a master's in the more planning kind of side. We obviously offer a number of different masters within that. Maybe if, Eoin, you want to speak to maybe the differences between our urban design and planning course, our urban development and planning course, or maybe then the regional and urban planning course itself, if students are trying to decide between one or the other.
Okay, so the urban design, the MRUP, which is a 2-year Masters of Regional and Urban Planning, it's a 2-year program that accepts people from a huge variety of backgrounds. It is an accredited program by the Royal Town Planning Institute and the Irish Planning Institute. So if you get onto that, and pass it, you're on a pathway to an accredited chartered planner status, a pathway to it. It has the full recognition. So most students who wish to become a professional planner pursue this program. It's a 2-year program. The MSc Urban Design and Planning, it's accredited for those who have an undergraduate degree that has RTPI recognition. For others, it enables a specialism, particularly those who may come from planning or from architecture or landscape to gain a greater exposure to urban design, but not necessarily on an accredited basis. So it has an accredited potential accreditation, but that's for those who have an existing RTPI spatial planning degree. Then the other program, which is a newer program, which is the MSc Planning, Development and Urban Design. So it's a little bit of a mouthful across the different programs. This one is a program specifically set up to enable professional practice architects gain an accredited planning degree or pathway to a chartered status ultimately. So this gives people who have an architecture professional qualification to gain a professional planning qualification as well that has recognized accreditation. So that's the key distinctions between them all. Again, so the focus on the MSc Planning, Development and Urban Design is on professional architects. That's the preference in terms of those seeking to do it. MSc Urban Design and Planning, it's a much more flexible in terms of the intake. It's not necessarily requiring people. People can come from geography, engineering, property economics, surveying, as opposed to planning more specifically. So it just enables people gain a specialism. I hope that people understand the slight nuances between them.
Yeah, great, thank you. And then just in relation to our new program, Oliver, if you want to speak to students who are maybe interested in the architecture, urbanism, climate action, but they're more interested in the environmental side, can they steer the modules and the module selection towards those particular areas while avoiding maybe the more planning or architectural side?
Yeah, Laura, I actually just typed an answer to that. With regard to the options modules, yes, absolutely. You can take all environmental focused options modules. There are 5 core modules, however, that do include architecture, urban design, not necessarily planning, although the GIS module is for policy and planning. So the answer, I guess, is within the options modules, absolutely, you can focus it towards environmental subjects. The core modules are core and required, and they will include some architectural and built environment topics.
Great, thank you. And then also just in relation to the Masters in Urban Design and Planning, again, for students who are more interested in one side or the other, is there opportunities to steer their focus towards one while avoiding maybe the other one if that's where their interest is?
I suppose that there's core modules that are really somewhat prescribed. The optional options are more, maybe more in sort of towards policy or theory, but the studio ones are all pretty much fixed. So whether they're a postgraduate studio in urban design studio, they're both required, and they're a substantial component of the program. And the discretionary bit is I wouldn't say it's huge. You can't. It's not about choosing between urban design and planning. It's about getting that exposure across both for people who are especially coming from a planning background, but giving them a more greater exposure to urban design.
Okay, great. And then just sticking with urban design and planning, do you think it's an appropriate master's for students who maybe have a background in the social sciences and humanities? And would they be considered?
It's probably not really what is being sought for the program. Much greater emphasis would be on people who are coming from much more related disciplinary backgrounds. I would suggest more the MRUP is a better focus for someone who's coming from the more social science and humanities, if they wish to pursue a program in planning per se, or related to planning, or indeed in environmental policy. But I wouldn't really suggest that someone coming from the humanities would seek to do the MSc in urban design and planning.
Great. And then Erin, just for yourself, how many students roughly do we take on to the MArch course? And maybe could you speak to the advantages of maybe keeping our class sizes quite small in our programs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I suppose generally our class sizes would be maybe between 45 to 60 each year, depending on our intake, and that would be kind of the capacity we would usually have for students. The advantages of maintaining a class size like that would be around the teaching, I suppose the tutor to student ratio. A lot of our teaching on the masters is taught in kind of seminars and groups. So when students start at the beginning of the year, they would, different groups would form based on people's interests. So there's kind of an expectation that students have a particular interest within architecture that they are at least interested in pursuing, and so those sizes, kind of the group sizes and the class sizes, allow that to facilitate that, the kind of seminars and group teaching and learning within groups, and that's kind of essential to the course really.
Great. And then Katie, if you just want to speak to maybe students who haven't made an application to us yet, but are hoping to make an application to us in the next little while, about application deadlines and maybe the timeline that students should follow from this point.
UCD operates a rolling application system, so we don't have a hard and fast deadline for applications. Basically, once the program has reached its capacity, that's when we stop. Some programs reach capacity in February in certain areas, and some will roll right up till August. So in terms of I think that question was particularly related to architecture and the MRUP. We're still open. So once you've submitted your full application, you should have an answer in around 10 to 15 working days. And that'll either be in the form of an offer, a conditional offer, or a no offer. But if you have any concerns or you feel that your application is not being processed quickly enough, again, please email myself or Laura directly and we can speed up the process for you. But currently, in the current situation, we are all working remotely from home, and it is business as usual in terms of processing applications right now.
Great. And then Erin, just for yourself, for students obviously looking to do the MArch, they would require a portfolio. Do any of our other masters require a portfolio, and maybe if you had some guidelines for students who are looking to prepare that?
Yep, so our Master in Landscape Architecture also requires a portfolio. Those are the only two. In terms of guidelines, there are some guidelines on the application process, but I suppose generally speaking, the panel are looking to ensure that the standard of work that students have been doing to date would really kind of allow them to succeed on our programs. So they're looking for work from across their undergraduate degree, and particularly the progression of work, maybe from first year through to the third or fourth year, depending on their degree program, and particularly a final year project from their undergraduate degree. And then students sometimes, or applicants sometimes, also include something from, if they're doing work experience or a year out, something relevant that they've been doing there. So really anything they feel helps with application. I suppose a PDF portfolio, probably maybe maximum 15 pages long. Really something that demonstrates the work they've been doing through their studies, and something that demonstrates their progression through their work as well.
And we've also had a question just around students, obviously because the campus is closed, around seeing the studios maybe in a virtual tour. Now, unfortunately, we don't have that capability at the moment, but when I'm sending you some links afterwards, I'll send you some links to some photos and pictures and resources that we have that you can kind of get a feel for the campus maybe a little bit. But Owen, maybe if you want to speak to the facilities that we have available within the Ridgeview part of our campus, yeah, what that means for the students that will come to do our programs.
Yeah, so we're located across a number of, well, a series of buildings across Ridgeview and Newstead. So there's all of those buildings generally have large studios within them. So in Newstead, Landscape Architecture has a large studio setting. Architecture has a studio for each year, essentially, of their undergraduate and graduate level degrees. And then in the planning building, or the planning and environmental policy building, there's two studios to cater for the planning and environmental policy master's programs. And then we've 2 urban design studios, especially recently opened for the urban design program, the MSc Urban Design and Planning, and also the MSc Planning, Development and Urban Design. There's also a library that has a specialist collection for architecture, planning, and the built environment cognate subjects, landscape also, which is relatively unique in UCD. We have our own dedicated staff in that building and our own collections for the school. There's a school print shop that provides or that sells supplies for students across the school in terms of necessary for the design and creative design kind of studios. And there's also a coffee shop in the campus area as well. All the faculty are located in that precinct as well across all those buildings. There's also I suppose there is a research intensity to the school that informs a lot of the teaching, and there's also a research building called the Richview Research Hub that houses a number of faculty, and also people who are employed on research contracts carrying out research work on Horizon 2020 or European Research Council, high-level research grants, like Oliver, who'd have a number of staff working in there on research associated with his projects. So it's a really good atmosphere in the campus. It has a nice sort of green setting in the center, so it's a nice atmosphere in the campus. I think most people enjoy the community feel that you get because it's slightly more discreet and smaller relative to the larger campus in Belfield. We're sort of on the edge of it. It's a good place to study and to work.
And then maybe for students who are wanting to start on the Best Foot Forward in September, do you find that academics tend to have reading lists, or how might students prefer academically to come to us in September, or is it best to contact their individual program coordinators for that?
I suppose if you're really motivated to get ahead already, maybe contact the program coordinator to see if there may be certain modules that have reading lists that people might be willing to share earlier. It's rare to get students that are motivated to get far ahead at this point. But if you are really keen, just get in touch with any of the faculty, and I'm sure they'd give you a few suggestions of what will be relevant in the modules that they teach. Particularly the program director. That'd be the principal point of contact initially in any event.
Great. And then just following on for students who are obviously doing courses with us and then are looking towards the job market or the job supports for looking when they're looking for careers afterwards. Maybe Eoin, if you could speak to academically what the supports are, and then Katie or Erin, if you want to speak to maybe the Career Development Centre and what the supports there are for students.
Yes, so there's a strong linkage between the programs, the faculty, the professional institutes, and sort of industry bodies more generally. Established through, for example, landscape architecture at an undergraduate level has an internship program, so there's strong links with industry. Architecture has a huge alumni body of professionals who have their own large architectural practices, small architectural practices. All of the design fellows who work in the school, there's 44 odd, are all practice-based architects or landscape architects. So there's a huge link with practice and opportunities through those linkages and networks to gain opportunities over time. Planning similarly has a huge alumni base, so it's a really well-established program for the planning and environment policy programs. We certainly have sort of a careers day organized locally. Architecture has end-of-year exhibitions where they usually have a large number of alumni and critics coming in from practice, where they get exposed to different members of the profession. So there's loads of career opportunities, formally and informally, I would say, that are created through the programs. Maybe if Erin's going to mention the careers office, we certainly have embedded or they come and talk to most of our programs at some point during the year. I might let Erin talk more on that.
Yeah, so we have a dedicated resource in the careers office that will be dedicated to our college. Nicola Fortune is our person at the moment, and she would organise a whole range of things for their undergraduate programs and for graduate students. You know, things like career preparation, or CD preparation, interview skills. She would also organise events throughout the year, networking events, really preparing and dedicated to our disciplines as well, preparing students, not just kind of general advice, but bespoke advice to our students about preparing for the workplace. And you know, so I think it's a huge resource there, and also available for one-to-one sessions for all of our students as well, that can be organised throughout the year. So it's a very strong resource that we have.
I should say that the student surveys of students who have completed, in terms of employment, they have been really favourable. So like anyone who really wanted a job was getting a job over the last number of years, as the economy has been performing really well in Ireland and across Europe, because a lot of our graduates go abroad to work as well. So the employment prospects have been really favourable. What happens now, I suppose there's lots of questions. We hope we're we hope in the Irish context that we're in a position to strongly recover, and hopefully the same can be said of all our European peers as well, and the US and China. But we don't know at this point. And that would be the hope, that we're in a position to bounce back and that the employment prospects will continue to be strong. I just wanted to, if I don't mind, just going back to the query about the distinction between the planning, development, urban design, and the urban design and planning. Planning, development, urban design is focused and tailored for fully qualified architects. And urban design and planning, it's really focused on those from architecture, landscape architecture, planning, and then sort of related disciplinary backgrounds. So that's just to distinguish the two. Sorry.
And then Katie, if you want to just mention to students who are maybe waiting to hear back about their scholarships, or if we do have any scholarships left open at this stage.
Okay, so if you have applied for a scholarship for a College of Engineering and Architecture VIP discretionary scholarship, they're currently being processed right now. The closing date was April 6th. So you should have results within the next 2 weeks, okay? If you have any queries relating to those ones, you can email me because I manage that process. Again, my email address is katie.o'neill@ucd.ie. But if you have applied, you should hear in the next 2 weeks. That is now closed, as I mentioned, on April 6th. The global scholarships, I don't look after these, and it depends on the region that you're coming from. They all have different deadlines in terms of if you have heard back or not. So if you're from the USA, you will have heard back. I believe if you're from India, you should have, I think you might have heard back, or you will hear back shortly. But again, rather than going through all the specific regions' emails, if you have a specific query, email me and I can give you the exact deadline. The other scholarship that was available is called the Government of Ireland Scholarship, and that deadline, I believe, was extended. Actually, Laura, I think you posted something on our social media recently about that with a different deadline, which is coming up also.
Yeah.
Specifically off the top of my head, and I believe that's
the deadline. Yeah, the deadline for the Government of Ireland scholarship should have been the end of March, but it has been extended until tomorrow. So if students have an offer or accepted an offer for us and they haven't applied for that, they have until tomorrow to do that. And I'll send a link to that later today when I respond to people who attended.
Excellent.
Great, thank you, Katie. And then just in relation to particularly the Masters of Architecture for students who are maybe wanting to not just work in Ireland, but maybe go abroad with their qualification. In your experience, Erin, do you see that students do that successfully?
Yeah, so I suppose our students have traditionally always travelled. I suppose our main advantage is our accreditations. We have accreditations in Ireland, and the RIBA, which is the UK accreditation, that covers a whole range of countries, kind of traditionally Commonwealth countries, or we're also recognised throughout Europe. And then we have substantial equivalency, although I think there has recently been a change to that title, but certainly recognition of our programme in the US. It was called substantial equivalency. I think that might have recently changed actually to something more transferable to our accreditation process, but certainly our programs are recognised in the US as well, which makes it much easier for our graduates to register as architects in the US. Our programs are recognised in very similarly to the way students who would come out of degrees in the US would as well. So our students are really in most regions throughout the world can register quite easily, and our graduates have always travelled and worked, and the reputation of UCD as well, and our alumni is world renowned in the world of architecture. You know, year on year, our graduates are winning awards and prizes. I won't go into some of that detail, but certainly, you know, in recent years, Donald Toomey and Shelley McNamara and Yvonne Farrell as well. So I mean, those kinds of things mean that our degree is very well recognised and our graduates are very well recognised. But in terms of accreditation, we are very well accredited as well to place our graduates to travel and work throughout the world.
Thank you. And then just in relation to, we had a question around being put in contact with maybe classmates from previous years. What I would say to that is UCD Global operates a lot of Facebook groups for international cohorts. And I'll send you some information about that as well. So you can join those Facebook groups and get to know students who are traveling with you coming in September. And also there'll be students there who've done the course previously that you can get in contact with just to get some information from them as well. And then Erin, we just had one question in relation to a student who has done their interview for the Masters of Architecture, and maybe just when they might hear back or the next kind of steps for them.
Yeah, I think I saw that question. So the interview was yesterday. Very quickly, really, very quickly, I think our interviews are being turned around. So I think the decisions that come from our panel go back if they're applicants from outside of the EU, our international office return. But I would say usually within a week anyway, if not sooner, applicants would get a decision on their interview. So quite quickly, I should imagine they should hear.
And then Erin, just sticking with you, for students who are obviously coming to September, they'll have to register for the classes. Could you speak to maybe that registration process a little bit and the timeline of that?
Yeah, so our online route, again, assuming we start on our standard September start this year, which we were expecting, I suppose, for continuing students and graduate, we hope, our registration process would usually start around the middle of August, and students would get emails about that. So there are some core modules that everybody is taking, and students would, like a studio module, and so there's a set of modules basically that you would be pre-registered to, and then there would be a list of options where students have choices as well, and those choices would take place in the last week or two of August. With a chance to change once they arrive here and start attending classes, a chance to change classes within the first 2 weeks. So I suppose nothing for a while, but certainly over the summer our website will publish our program structure is formalized for usually by July each year. We would have a formalized structure for the coming year with the ability to go online and register from mid-August onwards.
Right. And then just for the MRUP, there was an attendee asking just about class sizes and also how demanding the hours would be for that particular course, but I suppose how demanding the hours are for all our courses, because they would be quite practical in their content.
So on the MRUP specifically, the class size is generally 15 to 20. That's sort of that's the core class size. Most modules usually have more students in any individual module. So maybe people who have selected it as an elective from another program. But the core class size in any individual year of the MRUP is probably around 15 to 20 at present on an annual basis. For that particular program, in terms of its intensity, it would be similar to the MArch, quite an intensive program. There's large studio, or a large component of the program is studio, not as significant not to the same scale as an architecture, but there are intensive group projects, group presentations, individual presentations. So it's lecture based and studio based. Lecture is a more traditional format of the lecturer speaking to the class, whereas the studio ones are more individual student-led projects where the student drive the work and the intensity under the oversight of studio tutors or lecturers. So it's a fairly intensive program, the MRUP, over 2 years, with the final semester focused more on the individual research of the student. And I suppose in terms of the workload across all the graduate programs, it's a graduate level, so it's a step up from undergraduate. So usually people find it a steep learning curve initially, the transition from the undergraduate to the postgraduate level. But if you meet the requirements, it's because you have the capability to be there. It is more difficult. That's why we suggest, insofar as possible, to minimize any external work that you have to do, so that you can sort of achieve your ambitions with minimum amount of extra stress. But the workload, it is higher. It is a high level. We are a top tier university, so that the quality of the intake is really high. So students challenge each other in maintaining those standards as well. So it's hard, but it's within the grasp of anyone who's accepted. They're on merit because they're of the right. They've demonstrated their capability from their undergraduate degree.
Great. Thank you, Eoin. And we have time for one more question before we have to sign off. This is just in relation to a student who is maybe worried about obviously the current COVID-19 situation and the impact that might have on they're actually coming to us in September. So for that particular student, what I would say is, yes, there is the option to defer if that is what you decide to do. We are working towards business as usual in September, but if that's a personal situation, that's fine. Just send an email to myself or Katie, and we can discuss your options with you at that particular stage. But it's not a decision you have to make right away. And that's all our questions that we've had. I think we had a great discussion there. We had a lot of questions, a lot of engagement. I just want to say thank you to Eoin, to Oliver, to Erin and to Katie for participating today and for everyone tuning in. I'll follow up with the recording of today's session and also some links to resources based on the questions that we had today. And that's pretty much it. Again, thank you very much, and we'll sign off there. Bye.
Thank you.